Hi, welcome back to another Muscle Minute at musclementor.net. I'm here with Justin Harris and I'm Brad Hall, and we're doing, these are going to be on peak week, or what people call the peak week. And first we're going to go over, say, a male bodybuilder and what's going on there.
Yeah, I think this will be interesting. This is something when I first started I would have loved to have heard, because I had no idea really what to do. You know, when I did my first show, I didn't work with anyone. That was back before working with someone was really more common, but I had no clue what to do. And I was, you know, I luckily I had a science background, and that's kind of how I approached it. It's probably quite a bit different than I do now, but I mean, I'd try to find anything on the internet, and you'd hear all kinds of crazy things. I remember talking to one guy in the gym, and he told me to hit the tanner the morning of the show to burn that top layer of skin off. You know, which, and luckily I knew that was ridiculous, because what tanning does actually is damages the skin, and the body's response is to create the tan, but that damage, the body's response is to draw water into that area to help the healing process. Right. So tanning in the morning of the show is the worst thing you could do, you know, because it's going to draw water to the surface of your skin. Like some of the other things I heard eat a whole large pizza before going on stage, which might actually not be a bad idea, but eat a whole large pizza, you're going to go on stage with quite a decent turtle shell. Yeah,
dieting for so long, you're not used to that type of food. You might be in the bathroom when you're supposed to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, making a chocolate liquid ice cream.
Yeah,
soft serve. That's the word I'm looking for. But so we'll go through an example. What I do. I don't do one cookie cutter approach, but this will be a sort of a standard. If you are a male competitor, you're doing your first show, and you aren't working with someone, you don't want to look horrible on stage, and you want to make sure that the primary goal of the final week is don't look worse, and do only things you know will make you look better. This should be a good strategy to allow that to happen. So what I like to do is about 7 days out, and I'll actually, Jim, I can look gear with this. Is this going to the membership or not?
Yeah, it'll go in the membership section.
Okay. Well, we can keep this in as a mini outtake then.
Okay.
So let's go in the membership section. So I'll even include what to do with gear use. So about between 7 and 10 days out, you'll cut your GH out, and you'll cut your long-acting esters. So if you're taking any, test E, test cypionate, things like that, EQ, you'll cut those out about 7 to 10 days out. And a common misconception is you can use those as your pre-contest drugs. If you're short on money, I would much rather have you use test E and cut it at 7 to 10 days out, rather than use Probe and cut it out 3 to 5 days out. There's no difference. It's, at the end of the day, we're dropping the sodium retention that comes from that product. We want that kind of leaving the body at about 1 to 2 days out, what you're getting either way. All you're doing with the Probe is paying much more money to be able to take a few extra shots that last week.
And pinning all the fucking time.
Yeah, every day or two. So the long-acting esters and GH, about 7 to 10 days out, you'll cut. About 7 days out, you'll do your last leg workout, and for me, the last high-carb day. And that'll be one last day where 1 week out, partly we want the body used to having an influx of carbohydrates on that Saturday or whatever the day of the show is. It's just, you want your body to be in as much of a routine as possible. And then so that would be, if we're doing a Saturday show, that would be Saturday the week before. And then Sunday, Monday, and probably Tuesday would be medium carb days, depending on how lean you are. If you're truly in contest shape, they're going to be medium days. If you're not quite ready yet, and we need to still even be worried about fat loss those last days, they might be low carb days. Then Wednesday will be a low carb day, and then we'll start carbing up on Thursday. And a lot of people like to start carbing up on Wednesday, and that's kind of always been the traditional approach. But in my experience, what happens with that is you're full by Thursday afternoon, pretty much, and then you got a whole nother day Friday where you're just hoping not screw things up, and then half the day Saturday again before you finally get on stage, hoping to not screw up what you did. So I don't worry about that super compensation. Everyone has the idea with their first show that they look flat and small like Skeletor at 3 days out, but then they carb up and look like Randy Coleman. And that's just not what happens. Carbing up, what happens is that fullness comes from water, and if you're dry and ready, stage ready, there isn't that much water in the body that you're going to have that fullness. All we're looking to do is not be flat. We want the muscles as round as possible, but conditioning wins shows, not fullness. And so that's our worry isn't being full. Our worry is just not being flat. And if you're going to err on one side or the other, always err on the side of being flatter and drier, because conditioning always wins shows, especially at the state level. Almost, if you're following this protocol, it's probably you haven't done a bunch of shows and worked with someone. You're doing a state level show, and I'll tell you right now, if you are in true national level, pro level bodybuilding conditioning, strided glutes at your state show, you're going to win the overall. You can be a 6 foot tall middleweight. If you're shredded, that's just the way it is. No one has the size at that level, and no one has conditioning. So if you come into the show shredded, you're going to win because you'll be the only person in the show that's shredded. And so that should be your only worry. I always go in undersized, lose muscle even for a state show. Even at the national level, conditioning almost always is what matters. You know, there's lots of people who are on the verge of their pro card for half a decade or more, and almost always what happens is the year they finally win their pro card is the year they come in 10 pounds lighter than they have for the last 5 years and are truly fucking shredded. So, but around 3 days out, we'll cut out any short-acting esters that people are on. I usually keep orals in, not that it matters, but if someone's really, again, if someone's in true contest shape, I'll keep orals in. The sodium retention that comes from having androgen in your body will allow us to get you a little fuller, but that's only if you're truly shredded. If you're not, we'll cut those out at 3 days out also, and we'll start carving up on Thursday. And I don't do anything crazy. It's not a 2,000 gram carb day because what we're trying to do is repartition the water. At this point, we haven't really touched sodium. I keep water high so your water is still 2 gallons a day. Your sodium at the start of Thursday is you're still salting your food. Maybe not heavily salting, but you're still adding salt to your food. And then Thursday is basically our day to carb up. And you can't carb up and dry out at the same time. They're two mutually exclusive activities. Carbing up creates a transportation gradient where water, sodium, and glycogen is being pulled in the muscle. Drying out creates a concentration gradient where water and sodium is leaving the muscle. Trying to do both at the same time doesn't work, and all you're going to do is make nothing happen, basically. So Thursday, our goal is to do our filling out, bring water and glycogen in the muscle. And I've said this many times that glycogen storage requires 3 things. It requires glucose, obviously carbohydrates, but you have to have sodium and you have to have water. If you don't have sodium or water, what happens is your blood sugar levels start climbing. And as your blood sugars start climbing and you're hyponatremic means low blood sodium, what ends up happening is your body senses that hyponatremia and your blood sugar is climbing, and it goes into something called redistributive hyponatremia. And your body actually redistributes the water from the bloodstream, from the muscle into the extracellular space. And that's actually what spilling over is. It's not that you ate too many carbohydrates, it's that you didn't have enough sodium or water to take those carbohydrates to the muscle. And so your body panics, redistributes it, and brings it under the bloodstream. And you can Google redistributive hyponatremia and see right away, yeah, that's spilling over. Yeah. And so that's what happens. People spill over because they are trying to carb up while they're trying to dry out at the same time. You can always take glycogen in the muscle if you have sodium and water. Now, that doesn't mean you want to take 2,000 grams of carbohydrates with a bunch of sodium and water, because you'll get what you look like a week after the show, which is full and huge and really full, huge and veiny, but also a film of water on your body, which is going to look like just pure fat on stage. But we'll do that on Thursday, and I'll have people start tracking their blood sugar at this point. And I like to track blood sugar because it takes the guesswork out of that redistributive hyponatremia. It tells me when you're spilling over. If your fasted blood sugar before a meal is below 80, I know that you have tons of room to take glycogen back up to the muscle, and we can keep carving you up like crazy. If you're between about 80 and 110, I know we're right kind of in the range where your blood sugar normally should be before a meal. If you start getting above 110 before a meal, and that's US units, I think that would be about, in UK units, about 5. I can't remember what the units are in the UK, but 5.0 is about 110, 120 in the US. But if you start getting above that, what that tells me is your blood sugar is climbing and it's no longer able to take all that glucose into the muscle. And so we either need to add sodium back in and water back in to take that glucose to the muscle, or we need to back off the carbohydrates. And we can also use insulin at that time too. Insulin will give you a little extra push. If you start getting above 110, insulin will start trying to find sodium anywhere in the bloodstream that it can, water anywhere that it can, and use that also. But you only get a couple meals where that insulin works before eventually, even with insulin, your blood sugar is going to keep climbing, and there's nothing you can do about it. If there isn't sodium or water available, you can take as much insulin as you want. It's not going to happen. Insulin can only act when those other ingredients are there. And so then we get to Friday, and now Friday we're about as full as we're going to be. And by full, I mean you're not flat. You look round, you look good. Now you're just, all that's left is, a film of water. And when I say a film of water, we're talking 3 to 5 pounds. We're not, you're not trying to drop 20 pounds of water at that point. And you should be in enough shape where even at this point you would look stage ready. And so Friday typically we'll cut water out, and we'll keep carbohydrates decently high in the morning, and we'll track your fasted blood sugar before every other meal or so. And we'll just kind of use that range. Below 80, we'll keep pounding the carbohydrates. You can keep taking up. There's still enough sodium and water around. Between 80 and 110, we'll keep the carbohydrates moderate. We won't add any sodium back in. We'll keep the water. Usually on Friday, I do between a gallon and a half, and probably drop it somewhere between 6 and 9 p.m. And then if you get above 110, our first approach will be insulin. And then we'll retest in an hour, and if it hasn't gone back down, then we know that we're full as we're going to get, and we'll start backing off and tracking the blood sugar. If we do that, drop the carbs in half because you were over 110, and then at your next meal, if we've done that and we've used insulin and you're still above 110, then we'll probably drop the carbs out completely. And then what we'll do at that point is we're just going to try to keep you as close to 110 as we can, and then Saturday morning we'll probably just add back sodium and water a little bit to suck up whatever carbs are laying around. And then the most important thing is Saturday morning, your fasted morning blood glucose. If you take that and you blow 180, you're going to IHOP and eating and picking out. And
Below 80.
Yeah, below 80. Sorry. Did I say above? Yeah, if you're below
180.
Oh, if you're below 80, yeah, you're going and having a fun morning breakfast and doing a shit loading that people used to say, because you can handle it, and you're probably at that point you're probably dry but just look flat and really not round at all. And that's the worst place to be, but not the best place to be. It's actually a nice place to be because we know that we can't really do anything to make you look worse at that point. You might not have nailed it, but if you're between 80 and 110, we're right where we wanted you to be. If you're 90 that morning, we know that we got you as full as we can. You're about as dry as you can. And so what we're going to have is just a boring meal. I usually do something with fat and protein, eggs, maybe a fatty steak like a ribeye, and some just dried fruit and some nuts. We're not really worried about carbohydrates. We just want enough calories that we're not depleting the glycogen stores. We're just keeping you right where we got you right where we want you, like that. Was it the Flies that sing that song? Got you where I want you. Yeah. And that's what should be going through your head. If you're above 110, we're in kind of oh shit mode. At that point, we know what to do to save grace, but you probably didn't nail it. And that usually doesn't happen, but it's not a hard adjustment. First approach again will be insulin in the morning. Second approach will be no carbs, and we'll include sodium with your eggs. We'll probably do eggs and nuts and salted nuts or steak and nuts with sodium. And what we're hoping will happen is that insulin and that sodium is going to start looking for water under the skin and pull that up. And if it can't find water under the skin, then in an hour or two later, you're still going to be above 110. At that point, we have to add water back in. And what's going to happen is you're not going to look as best as you can on stage, but you're not going to look bad, and that's basically the goal of the whole final week, is not F everything up. But that's what we'll do, and then we'll just kind of every 3 hours before prejudging kind of repeat that same meal. And I'll give you basically a meal. If you're below 80, have this meal. If you're between 80 and 110, have this meal every 3 hours. If you're greater than 110, have this meal every 3 hours. And you really don't change much. Whatever you are Friday morning is pretty much what you're going to be. And then between shows, almost always just go pig out. The night show isn't judged, and it's only judged for their overall, and more or less 99 times out of 100 they've already had the overall pick from the morning show. The only time it really matters is if it's really close between you and someone else, maybe the light heavy and the heavy or something. But even then, I'll probably have you go eat something like a burger and fries. And what you kind of get if you go and you pig out with a bunch of food and some sodium and some water again, you really probably have about 12 hours where all those things are going to work together to just keep filling you up. And the extra water is going to be sitting in your bloodstream. And about 12 hours later, it's going to start spilling over. And by the morning, you'll start looking softer. But for the night show, you're really pretty safe, and you're not going to look too bad.
And that's why you look even more vascular.
Yeah. And that's one way to know when you're too flat is you should have veins on stage. If you don't have any veins, you are too dehydrated, and you'll see that a lot. And what ends up happening is when people don't have there's a look that is very clear you're too dehydrated, And the person, a lot of times people think they spilled over, but if you're spilled over, you'll have veins still. If you are just too dehydrated, what'll happen is you'll see people that have no veins, no bicep vein, but they look like soft somehow, like they look like there's a film of water under their skin. And really what it is they're just too dehydrated, too flat, and there's no water in the muscle. Not that there's not less water on their skin, there's just nothing pulling that skin tight. And that's a classic over dehydrated look.